Captain Leanne Cross stood at the wide glass window of Station Orpheus, staring out at the endless darkness of space. Bright stars blinked at him like old ghosts, and ships moved like tiny insects outside the docking ring. He placed one gloved hand on the cold glass, feeling the hum of the station beneath his boots. Leon had spent most of his life away from Earth. He was a fleet officer now, respected, disciplined, always in control. But tonight, he felt like that lost boy again, the one who had nothing except an old blanket and a single friend who made the cold nights bearable. He had not planned to stay on Station Orpheus for long. He came to refuel, check supply lines, and deliver a report. Nothing more. But since he arrived, strange memories kept knocking inside his head. He saw kids playing in dusty halls, heard laughter that turned to screams when the soldiers came. And always, in the corner of his mind, was the same question. What happened to him? Leanne walked away from the window and moved deeper into the station. He wore his uniform, but he left his rank badge behind in his small quarters. Tonight, he wanted to feel normal, invisible. The upper decks were clean and bright, traders, officers, families eating together in warm light. But Leon took the lift down to the lower levels, where the air smelled like oil and old wires. Neon lights flickered above rusty doors. Strange people with hidden eyes whispered in dark corners. He stopped at a small food stall run by an old woman, with metal hands. He ordered a cup of hot broth and leaned against a wall, watching people move past him like shadows. He wondered if he would ever find peace. Maybe, he thought, it was not possible for someone like him. Then he saw him. At first, Leanne thought it was a trick of the light. A tall figure in a dark cloak stood near a broken vending machine. The figure's head turned slowly, and their eyes, bright, clear, strange, locked with Leon's. Leon froze. Something deep in his chest twisted. He knew those eyes. He had seen them once, long ago, when he hid under a bunk bed with a small boy who was not fully human, but who smiled like one. The figure moved closer. The people around them did not seem to care. Nobody noticed how the stranger's steps made no sound on the metal floor. When the figure stopped in front of Leon, they slowly pulled back their hood. Leon's breath caught in his throat. The face was not human. Pale scales shimmered like tiny jewels under the weak neon lights. The skin around the mouth and eyes was softer, more human-like. The nose was small and flat. The ears were pointed. But the eyes, dark with flecks of gold, were the same. Eyes Leon had seen when he was a child. The stranger tilted his head. His voice was soft, gentle, and when he spoke, it felt like a whisper from a long-forgotten dream. Do you remember me, human? We grew up in the same orphanage. Leon dropped his cup. Hot broth splashed on his boots, but he did not care. He could only stare. The stranger's eyes softened, like he understood the shock in Leon's face. Kesh? Leon's voice cracked, like old wood. How are you alive? The alien, Kesh, gave a small, sad smile. His sharp teeth did not look dangerous in that moment. I could ask you the same. I thought you died when the soldiers burned the old dorm. Leon felt the station spin around him. The noise of voices and machinery faded. All he could see was Kesh. Memories crashed through him. He was 7 years old again, hiding behind crates with a small boy whose scales glowed when he laughed. They would share stolen bread and dream about the stars. They promised each other that one day they would escape and find a place where nobody would hurt them. Kesh, Leon whispered again. He wanted to touch him, to see if he was real, but his hand stayed frozen by his side. Kesh's eyes darted around. He stepped closer and pulled Leon into the shadows behind the food stall. His claws brushed against Leon's sleeve, careful not to scratch the fabric. Listen to me, Kesh said quickly. I don't have much time. They know I'm here. I should not have shown my face, but when I saw you— Who knows you're here? Leon asked. His officer's mind was waking up now. He scanned the crowd. Nothing looked out of place, but old instincts told him danger was near. Kesh's scales flickered a dull red before calming again. Hunters, bad ones. They think my blood can buy them power. I've been running since I escaped the labs. I should have left the station the moment I docked, but I had to see you. Leon's head spun with questions. Labs? Hunters? He wanted answers, but he also wanted to pull Kesh into a safe room, lock the door, and keep him hidden like they used to hide behind old crates at the orphanage. Why come here? Leon asked. Why now? Because I had to know if you were real, Kesh said. His voice cracked for the first time, like a child lost in the dark. I had to know if you still remembered me. Leon felt something burn behind his eyes. He looked away, afraid that if he blinked, Kesh would disappear. But when he looked back, Kesh was still there. Scales, gold-flecked eyes, sad smile. Remember you? Leon said. I never forgot. A sudden shout broke the moment. A group of rough-looking men in black coats pushed through the crowd, their eyes cold and sharp. One of them pointed at Kesh. Another pulled out a scanner that beeped when aimed at him. Kesh grabbed Leon's wrist. His scales glowed faintly under the neon light. Run, he whispered. Leon did not think. He pulled Kesh behind him, pushing, past people, knocking over crates. Shouts rose behind them. Someone fired a stun bolt that cracked into a wall. Sparks rained down. They ran deeper into the tunnels of Station Orpheus. Two old friends, one human, one not, connected by a memory of broken beds, stolen bread, and a promise made long ago under a leaking roof. The tunnels under Station Orpheus were dark and cold. Pipes dripped water from the ceiling, and the floor was wet and slippery. Leon and Kesh moved fast, their boots splashing in puddles as they ran. Behind them, angry voices shouted, and boots pounded on metal. Leon pulled Kesh into a side tunnel and pressed him against the wall. He put a finger to his lips, telling Kesh to stay silent. They listened. The hunters' voices echoed closer, but they did not turn into the side tunnel. Slowly, the footsteps faded into the distance. Kesh let out a shaky breath. I hate hiding like this, he whispered. I've been running for so long. Leon stepped back and looked at him properly for the first time. Even in the dim light, Kesh's scales glowed faintly, like tiny stars on his skin. His clothes were old and torn in places. A long cloak covered most of him, but Leon could see how thin he was, like he hadn't eaten properly in weeks. You need food, Leon said. His mind raced with questions, but old habits made him focus on what Kesh needed first. And rest. We can't run forever. Kesh gave a small laugh, though it sounded tired. You're still the same, always trying to take care of me. Remember how you hid food under your blanket? For me, Leon remembered. He could see it so clearly. Two small boys huddled together on a cold bunk bed. He was always hungry, but Kesh was always hungrier. The other kids called Kesh strange names and stayed away from him. Leon was the only one who sat beside him during meals. He was the only one who didn't care about scales or pointed ears. I remember, Leon said quietly. He felt his chest ache with old memories. I remember the old swing in the yard, the broken robot we fixed behind the kitchen. The night you disappeared. Kesh looked away. His fingers touched the edge of his cloak, playing with the loose thread. I didn't disappear, Leon. They took me, soldiers, scientists. I heard them say I wasn't supposed to be there with human children. They called me a mistake. Leon's hands curled into fists. He hated the thought of Kesh, small and scared, dragged away while the orphanage burned. He had always believed Kesh died that night, Now he wondered how much more Kesh had suffered after that. "Who were they?" Leon asked. "Who took you?" Kesh sighed. "People who wanted to make something new. Something better, they said. A child who could breathe different air, see in the dark, live on planets where humans cannot. But they didn't see me as a child, just a test." Leon felt anger rise inside him, but he forced it down. Getting angry wouldn't help Kesh now. He touched Kesh's shoulder gently. The scales felt cool under his glove. "You're here now. You found me. That means something." Kesh's eyes shone in the dim light. "I only survived because I kept one thing safe in my head. The memory of you. The promise you made." Leon frowned. "What promise?" Kesh gave a small smile. "You don't remember? You said we'd run away one day. Find a planet with a big tree and soft grass. You said we'd build a small house and nobody would tell us to go away." Leon's throat felt tight. He did remember. He had almost forgotten. But now, the memory was bright and sharp. Two boys under a blanket, whispering about a place where they could be free. A sudden noise made both of them freeze. Voices. The hunters were back, searching the tunnels. Leanne grabbed Kesh's arm. "Come on, I know a place." They moved quietly through the maze of pipes and broken floors. Leon led Kesh to an old service room behind a rusted door. Inside, the air smelled like oil and dust. There were old crates, broken machines, and a single flickering light overhead. "This will do for now," Leon said. He checked the door to make sure it's still locked. He found a small bottle of water and an emergency ration pack in one of the crates. He handed them to Kesh. Kesh sat on a crate and drank the water slowly, careful not to spill a drop. He tore, opened the ration pack, and ate quickly but quietly. Leon watched him, feeling a deep pain in his chest. Kesh was no longer the small boy he remembered, but in some ways, he hadn't changed at all. "When did you escape?" Leon asked when Kesh finished eating. Kesh wiped his mouth with his sleeve. 2 years ago, the lab lost power during an attack. I slipped out through a waste tunnel. I've been running since then. They keep sending hunters to catch me. They want to know if I'm the only one like me." "You are, aren't you?" Leon asked softly. Kesh nodded. "I think so. The others didn't survive." He looked down at his clawed hands. "Sometimes I wish I hadn't either. But then, I remember the swing, the blanket, the way you held my hand when I was scared. And I keep running." Leon sat beside him. He didn't know what to say. He wanted to promise Kesh that everything would be okay, but he knew that would be a lie. "They won't stop, will they?" Leanne asked. "No," Kesh said. "Not until they have what they want, or until I'm gone." Silence filled the small room. The only sound was the soft hum of old machines trying to work. Leon felt the weight of his badge, his uniform, the life he had built far away from this pain. But all of it felt so small now, sitting beside the boy who once made him feel less alone. "You're not alone anymore," Leon said. He placed a hand on Kesh's shoulder again. "Not this time." Kesh looked at him, eyes shining. For a moment, he looked like that small boy again, hiding behind crates with stolen bread and big dreams. "I can't run forever, Leon," Kesh said. His voice was quiet but steady. "I need your help." Leon took a deep breath. He knew what helping Kesh meant. It meant breaking rules. It meant turning his back on his orders, maybe even his rank. But deep inside, he knew he would do it. He had made a promise once, and he would keep it. "Then we'll run together," Leon said. "And when we stop running, we'll fight." Outside the door, the voices grew closer again. Kesh reached out and grabbed Leon's hand, just like he did all those years ago. Together, they waited for the next move. 2 orphans, 1 human, and 1 not, holding on to the memory that made them family. Leanne and Kesh stayed hidden in the small service room for an hour. They spoke in whispers, sharing short stories about what had happened since they last saw each other. But the noise outside grew louder every minute. Boots, scanners, and angry. Voices searching every tunnel. Kesh sat on the floor, back against an old crate. His eyes followed Leon as he moved around the small room, checking the walls for hidden exits. "They will find us soon," Kesh said softly. Leon turned to face him. "Not if we move first." He opened a panel behind an old generator. It led to a tight maintenance shaft, barely wide enough for them to crawl through. "You remember every corner of this place?" Kesh asked with a faint smile. Leon shrugged. "I spent enough time in these lower decks when I first joined the fleet. Sometimes when I needed to be alone, I came here." Kesh stood up and pulled his cloak tighter around himself. His scales glowed faintly again. "You never liked crowds. Even as a child, you liked the quiet corners." Leon gave a small laugh. "And you liked to drag me out into the yard to look at stars. You always said you wanted wings." Kesh touched the top of his head where small fin-like ridges peeked through his dark hair. "Maybe I still do." They both fell silent for a moment. Outside, voices shouted again. Leon pushed the panel open all the way. "Come on, we can reach an old cargo bay through this shaft. If we get there before they do, we can steal a ship." Kesh hesitated. "You'll be marked a traitor if they find out you helped me." Leon's eyes locked with his. "I don't care. I'm not losing you again." Kesh nodded. He crawled into the narrow shaft first. Leon followed, pulling the panel shut behind him. The air inside was hot and smelled like old oil. Pipes lined the walls, and dust floated around their heads as they moved slowly through the metal tunnel. They crawled for what felt like forever. Kesh moved ahead, his claws scratching softly on the metal floor. He stopped sometimes to listen, his head turned sideways, ears twitching at every echo. Leanne felt sweat drip down his back, but he kept moving. Finally, Kesh pushed open a small hatch. Cold air rushed in. They crawled out into a wide, dark cargo bay. Old crates were stacked high, and a single ship, an old cargo shuttle, sat under flickering lights. Kesh stood and stretched his arms, then looked around nervously. "Will it fly?" Leon checked the shuttle from a distance. Its hull was scratched, and some panels were missing paint, but the shape looked strong. "It'll fly if we're lucky. Stay here." He moved to the shuttle's side hatch, using a small tool from his pocket to open the lock. The door hissed open, and stale air escaped. Leon climbed inside. Kesh followed him, closing the hatch behind them. Inside, the shuttle smelled like dust and old fuel. Leon sat in the pilot's seat and wiped off the controls with his sleeve. He pressed a few buttons. Lights flickered weakly, then glowed a steady green. "We're in luck," Leon said with a small smile. "It still has fuel." Kesh's eyes glowed brighter for a moment. "Where will we go?" Leon leaned back in the seat, thinking. "Somewhere they won't follow easily. There's an asteroid belt near the edge of the system. Lots of hiding spots. After that, we'll need a real plan." Kesh sat beside him. "You always make plans, even when you were small." Leon looked at him, really looked. He could see the lines under Kesh's eyes, the tired look of someone who had run for too long. He wished he could take that pain away, but he knew only one thing now. He would not let Kesh run alone again. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed through the cargo bay. Kesh jumped to his feet and looked through the small window. "They're here," he said. Leon powered up the shuttle. The old engine hummed to life, shaking the floor under their boots. Red lights flashed on the control panel. The bay's main doors stayed shut. "They locked the exit," Kesh said, panic in his voice. Leon's mind raced. He pulled up the shuttles, old systems. There's an emergency override for the outer doors, but it's outside, near the control panel by the catwalk. Kesh stared at him. If you go out there, they'll see you. Leon pulled out his sidearm, a small stun pistol. If I don't, they'll catch us anyway. Stay inside. When the doors open, lift off. If I'm not back in time... Kesh grabbed his arm. Don't say that. We leave together, or not at all. Leon looked at him, then nodded. He placed the pistol in Kesh's hand instead. Then cover me. He opened the shuttle hatch and slipped outside, sticking to the shadows behind crates. Above, he saw movement. 3 hunters with scanners sweeping the bay. He moved slowly, step by step, until he reached the control panel on the far wall. Kesh watched from the shuttle window. His claws tapped the pistol nervously. He saw one of the hunters turn toward Leon's position. Kesh took a deep breath. He had promised he wouldn't be afraid again. Suddenly, Kesh pushed the hatch open and fired a stun shot at the hunter's feet. Sparks flew. The hunter stumbled back, shouting. Leon looked up, saw what Kesh did, and nodded once. He smashed the control panel with his elbow. Sparks flew as old circuits died. The cargo bay doors rumbled as they slowly opened. Cold space wind blew inside, sucking loose papers and dust into the void. Leon ran back to the shuttle as alarms screamed through the bay. Kesh reached out a hand and pulled him inside, just as more stun shots fired behind them. The shuttle hatch slammed shut. Leon jumped into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. Engines roared to life. The shuttle lifted off the deck, pushing crates aside as it hovered toward the open bay doors. Behind them, the hunters fired more shots, but the shuttle's old armor held strong. In one final burst of power, the shuttle blasted through the open doors and into the cold, endless dark of space. Inside, Leon and Kesh sat side by side, breathing hard. For a moment, they didn't say a word. Outside, stars stretched wide and bright, just like they used to dream about. Kesh leaned back, closing his eyes. I knew you'd come back for me. Leon looked at him, one hand steady on the controls. And I always will. Together, they disappeared into the stars. 2 runaways, hunted but not alone, ready to face whatever waited next. The old shuttle moved like a tired bird through the black ocean of space. Its engines rattled and hummed, but they held steady. Inside, Captain Leon Cross sat at the controls while Kesh watched the stars pass by through the scratched window. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence was not empty. It was heavy with memories, plans, and quiet hope. Somewhere behind them, the hunters were probably still searching. But for now, the darkness outside felt safe, like a blanket around 2 old friends. Kesh finally broke the silence. Where are we going? Leon adjusted a dial and checked the fuel gauge. Zeta Prime, it's far enough. An old mining planet. No law, no questions, just people trying to survive. We can hide there. Kesh pulled his knees up to his chest and wrapped his cloak tighter. I hate hiding. Leon glanced at him. It won't be forever. You said someone on Zeta Prime can help? Yes, Kesh said. A scientist, Dr. Mira. She helped create me. She knows how to hide my DNA markers. If we find her, maybe they'll stop chasing me. Leon frowned. Why would she help? She was part of the people who hurt you. Kesh shrugged. She wasn't like the others. She used to sneak me extra food. She taught me words, songs, stories. She called me Little Star. When the lab fell, I think she ran too. I heard rumors she hides on Zeta Prime now. Leon watched Kesh's eyes as he spoke. They were tired, but still held that soft glow, like a distant campfire in the cold dark. He wanted to believe Kesh's hope. Maybe this Dr. Mira really could help. Maybe they could finally stop running. The shuttle's engine made a sharp sound, and Leon quickly adjusted the power flow. The lights flickered but stayed on. Kesh chuckled quietly. Remember the old robot in the orphanage? The one we fixed? Leon allowed himself a small smile. Rusty? Of course. He only knew 3 words. Hello, food, no. Kesh's laugh was soft, but real. You gave him your blanket when it got cold. You said he might feel lonely. Leon looked away, pretending to check the controls again. You're the only one who remembers these things. That's why I came back, Kesh said. Not just to run. I wanted to remember with you, so I wouldn't be alone in my head anymore. Leon felt something deep in his chest, something old and warm, like the feeling of small hands grabbing, his under a broken bed while bombs fell outside. He did not say anything, but he let Kesh's words sit between them like a small, quiet promise. Hours passed as they drifted through space. Leanne took turns closing his eyes, but he never fully slept. He kept one ear open for any sound, a beeping warning, an engine sputter, or worse, a hunter's ship on their tail. Kesh stayed awake most of the time, too. He hummed old songs from Earth. He found an old piece of chalk in the shuttle's tool box and drew small shapes on the metal wall, a swing, a small house, a star. Leon watched him sometimes, and for a moment, the cold shuttle felt a little more like home. When they were almost halfway to Zeta Prime, Kesh asked, "Why did you join the fleet, Leon?" Leon thought for a long time before answering. "I wanted to feel safe, strong, like nobody could push me around again. I wanted to protect people who couldn't protect themselves." Kesh nodded. "Did it work?" Leon let out a small breath. "Sometimes, but not always." He looked at Kesh. "What about you? What did you want when you escaped the lab?" Kesh looked down at his claws. "I wanted to find you, and then I didn't know what I wanted after that." Silence returned, but it was softer now, not so heavy. The shuttle beeped, waking Leon from his thoughts. He looked at the small radar screen. A blinking light showed a ship in the distance, a large cargo freighter drifting slowly, no signs of weapons, just an old miner's ship like so many near the edges of the system. "We'll pass close," Leon said. "No reason to worry." But Kesh still stared at the blinking dot. "What if they call the hunters?" "They won't," Leon said firmly. "Not everyone out here cares about bounties. Some people just want to stay alive, same as us." Kesh nodded, but did not look convinced. He pulled his cloak tighter again. He always did that when he felt nervous. When the freighter was behind them, Kesh finally relaxed. Leon felt the tension ease, too. He checked the fuel, enough to reach Zeta Prime, but not enough to go anywhere else afterward. If they failed there would be no second chance. Hours turned into a day. Leon gave Kesh half of the last ration pack and forced him to eat. Kesh protested, but obeyed in the end. Afterward, they sat near the window looking at distant stars. "Do you think we'll find the tree?" Kesh asked suddenly. Leon blinked. "What tree?" "The one we dreamed about. Big tree. Soft grass. The house under it." Leon smiled faintly. "Maybe. Maybe we'll plant it ourselves." Kesh closed his eyes and leaned his head on Leon's shoulder. For a while, they stayed like that. 2 lost orphans drifting through space, dreaming of trees and soft grass. When the shuttle finally dropped out of the main lane, Zeta Prime glowed ahead, a dusty brown world covered in mines and old domes. Smoke rose from small cities. Broken ships circled above, acting as makeshift homes for those who couldn't afford to live planetside. Leon felt the weight in his chest again. This world looked nothing like the green place they once dreamed about. But maybe, just maybe, it would be enough for now. "Hold on," he said as he guided the shuttle toward the surface. "Let's find your Dr. Mira. Let's see if we can stop running." Kesh nodded, eyes fixed on the dusty planet. He whispered something under his breath. Maybe an old prayer. maybe a promise to himself. The shuttle broke through the thin clouds and flew toward a small mining outpost where secrets waited and old ghosts might finally find rest. The old shuttle landed on the rough landing pad at the edge of Zeta Prime's mining town. The town looked tired. Small domes made from metal scraps, dirt roads filled with dust and oil, and broken machines lying everywhere like skeletons. Leon and Kesh stepped out of the shuttle and felt the dry wind hit their faces. The air tasted like rust and burnt metal. Miners wearing cracked helmets and old suits stared at them but said nothing. On this world, people minded their own business. Leon pulled his coat tighter and looked at Kesh. "Are you sure about Dr. Mira?" Kesh nodded. His eyes scanned the dusty streets. "I heard she hides near the old refinery, a small lab under the rock hills. She won't have much, but she might have a way to help." They walked through the mining town slowly, careful not to draw too much attention. Kesh kept his hood up, covering his scales and pointed ears. Leon kept one hand near the old stun pistol hidden under his coat. As they moved past rusty buildings, Leon's eyes kept searching every alley, every corner. He trusted no one here. This place smelled like secrets and old lies. They reached the refinery by nightfall. The huge metal tower still released steam and smoke, though half of it looked broken. Kesh found a hidden path behind old pipes. They followed it to a small metal door half buried in the rock. Kesh knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a small hatch opened in the door. 2 old eyes peered out. "Kesh?" A woman's voice, old but strong. Kesh pulled back his hood, showing his scales in the dim light. "It's me, Mira." The door creaked open, and an old woman pulled Kesh into a hug. She was thin and wore a heavy coat covered in oil stains. Her hair was silver and tied back. She looked at Leon with sharp eyes that saw too much. "You brought a friend," she said. "He's family," Kesh said firmly. Mira stepped aside. "Come in, quickly." Inside, the small lab was cramped but warm. Machines hummed softly and old lights glowed yellow. Bottles, notes, and small tools were scattered everywhere. Mira made them sit on 2 metal chairs. She handed Kesh a small cup of warm broth. He drank slowly, eyes never leaving her face. "You look older," Kesh said with a soft smile. Mira chuckled. "So do you, little star. But you're alive. That's what matters." Leon watched them closely. He didn't trust. "Mira yet?" His voice was calm but firm when he asked, "Can you help him?" Mira looked at Leon carefully. "You must be Leon Cross. He talked about you when he was small. The human boy who kept him alive when no one else would." Leon didn't answer. He only waited. Mira sighed. She sat at her workbench and pulled up an old flickering screen. Strange data flashed across it. "Yes, I can help. I still have the old equipment. I can hide his DNA markers. They won't find him after that." Kesh looked hopeful. "Will it hurt?" "A little," Mira said gently. "But only for a short time." Leon leaned forward. "What's the cost?" Mira's eyes met his. "The markers are tied to his memory center. Removing them will erase parts of who he is, the special parts they made, but maybe more. He may forget you. He may forget himself." Kesh froze. The cup slipped from his claws and fell to the floor. The warm liquid spread across the metal. "I don't want to forget," Kesh whispered. "I ran all these years because I remembered." Leon grabbed his shoulder. "Then we'll find another way." But Mira's voice cut through the room like a knife. "There is no other way, child. If they catch you, they will take you apart, piece by piece. You know this." Kesh's eyes watered. He looked at Leon, searching his face for an answer. "What do I do?" Leon held his gaze. He remembered the small boy under a blanket, whispering dreams about trees and grass. He hated this moment. hated that Kesh had to choose between freedom and himself. "We decide together," Leon said, "but no one touches you until we both agree." Mira watched them, her fingers tapping the old table. Her eyes flicked to a small device on the corner of her desk, a blinking red light. Outside, hidden behind rocks, dark shapes moved closer to the small lab. Shadows with scanners and stun rifles. They waited for a signal. Inside, Kesh wiped his eyes and spoke softly. "Mira, did you tell them?" Mira did not answer, but the blinking light on her desk told the truth. Leon stood up sharply, grabbing his pistol. "You sold him out?" Mira looked sad but calm. "I am tired, Captain. The Syndicate offered me protection. I'm old. I cannot run anymore. This is the price." Kesh's claws curled tight around the edge of the chair. His scales shimmered with anger and fear. "I trusted you. I did keep you alive once," Mira said softly. "But I am not strong like you. Forgive me, little star." The sound of footsteps echoed outside. Heavy boots, weapons ready. Leon moved to the door and locked it. He turned to Kesh. "We fight. We do it together." Kesh stood up slowly. His eyes glowed bright, no longer the eyes of a lost child, but of someone ready to fight for himself. He looked at Mira one last time. "Goodbye, Mira." Mira's old shoulders sank. She turned away, unable to meet his eyes. Outside, the hunters shouted orders. They started to pound on the door, metal shaking under their boots. Leon checked his pistol, then handed Kesh an old wrench from Mira's table. "Stay behind me. If they break through, run for the back tunnel." Kesh nodded but didn't move back. He stood beside Leon, claws ready. For once, he did not hide them. The door shuddered under a heavy hit. Dust fell from the ceiling. Kesh looked at Leon. "You remember the promise?" Leon met his eyes and gave a small, fierce smile. Under the big tree, the house with soft grass. Kesh's claws tightened around the wrench. The door cracked under another hit, and together, a human and the child he once saved, they waited for the hunters to come. The metal door shook again as the hunters slammed it with heavy boots and weapons. Sparks flew from the hinges. Leon and Kesh stood side by side in the small lab, their shadows stretched by the flickering lights. Outside, muffled voices barked. Orders. A low voice yelled, "Open the door, give us the hybrid, and we will spare the human." Leon glanced at Kesh. Kesh looked back, his eyes calm but sharp. "They're lying," Kesh said. Leon gave a short nod. "I know." He checked, the old stun pistol in his hand. The charge was low. Maybe 5 shots left, not enough against trained hunters. He glanced at Mira, who sat silently by her desk, her old hands folded in her lap. She didn't speak, didn't look at them, only stared at the blinking light on her table that had betrayed them. The door bent under another heavy hit. Kesh whispered, "What do we do when they come in?" "We break through them," Leon said, "and run for the tunnels. There's an old crawler out there, near the East Ridge. If we reach it—" "We reach the tree," Kesh said softly. His scales glowed under the old lamplight. The door finally cracked open. Cold wind rushed into the warm lab as metal hinges fell apart. 3 hunters in dark armor pushed inside, their helmets hiding their faces. They raised stun rifles, lights blinking red. "Stay where you are!" the lead hunter shouted. "No one needs to die!" But Leon saw their fingers tighten on the triggers. He stepped forward, placing himself in front of Kesh. "No one needs to die?" Leon asked, voice steady. "You've chased him across half the system. You burned labs. You killed your own people." "He's property," the hunter snapped. "Step aside, Captain Cross. You know what this is." Leon felt a deep anger burn inside him. Property? Kesh was once a small boy with a blanket and a swing, not an experiment, not an object. "I know what this is," Leon said. He raised his pistol. This is family. Before the hunter could shout, Leon fired. The stun shot cracked through the room, hitting the lead hunter in the chest. Sparks flashed, and the man fell. The other two shouted and fired back. Kesh grabbed Leanne's arm, pulling him behind a steel workbench as stun bolts slammed into the walls and Mira's equipment. Glass shattered, lights sparked, and died. Leon fired back, hitting another hunter in the leg. The man fell, groaning as his weapon clattered across the floor. Kesh sprang up, moving fast. He swung the heavy wrench at the last hunter, catching him by surprise. The wrench hit the side of the helmet with a loud crack. The hunter stumbled, dropping his rifle. Leon rushed forward, grabbing the fallen weapon. He aimed it at the last hunter, forcing him to back up against the wall. "Go!" Leon ordered Kesh. "The tunnel!" Kesh nodded. He looked once at Mira. The old woman finally lifted her eyes. For a heartbeat, regret flickered there, but not enough to change what she had done. "Goodbye, Mira," Kesh whispered. He slipped through the back door, and Leon followed, covering him with the stolen rifle. Behind them, the last hunter cursed and stumbled after them, but he was too slow. Outside, the cold wind cut through their clothes as they ran through narrow paths between broken pipes and rock walls. The mining outpost's night lights glowed, dim and weak behind them. They reached the edge of the ridge. Below, half buried under rocks and rust, sat an old crawler vehicle. Big tires, cracked windows, but a working engine, Leon hoped. "Get in," Leanne shouted. He fired one more shot at the shadows behind them. The last hunter shouted orders into his comm, calling for backup. Kesh jumped into the crawler's seat. His claws fumbled with the old controls. Leon slammed the rifle on the back seat and climbed beside him. He punched the ignition. The crawler coughed once, twice. Then the old engine roared to life. Leon slammed the pedal. The crawler jerked forward, bouncing over rocks and loose soil. Behind them, lights flickered on the ridge. More hunters, more weapons. Bolts of stun fire zipped past the crawler, hitting the dirt and sending sparks into the cold night. But the crawler kept moving. Its old wheels chewed through the dirt, carrying them away from the refinery, the betrayal, the burning lights of the outpost. Inside, Kesh laughed breathlessly, his claws gripping the dash. "You always fix broken things." Leon managed a small smile. "This time, we're not fixing it. We're riding it till it dies." They drove for hours through the rough desert of Zeta Prime, heading for the edge of the mining zone. Slowly, the lights behind them faded into the night. The sky above was clear, endless black, dotted with cold stars. Finally, when they were sure they were alone, Leon stopped the crawler near a dry riverbed. They stepped out into the night. Wind brushed against their faces, carrying the smell of dust and old earth. Leon sat down on a rock, breathing hard. Kesh dropped beside him, curling his tail around his feet. "We can't run forever," Kesh said softly. Leon looked at the desert ahead, empty, wide, silent. "No," he said, "but we can run long enough to make a choice." Kesh looked at him. His scales glowed faintly under the starlight. And after that, Leon's eyes softened. He pointed up at the stars. "One day we find a place with real grass. A big tree. A small house. No fences. Just us." Kesh closed his eyes. He leaned his head on Leon's shoulder, just like when they were boys hiding under a bunk bed. "Promise?" Kesh whispered. Leon rested his head on Kesh's. "Promise." Above them, a shooting star crossed the dark sky, fast, bright, gone in a blink. But for these two lost boys, hunted and hurt, but not broken, the promise stayed. A home under a big tree, with soft grass, and a place where they could be free. And somewhere deep in the desert night, two friends who once shared stolen bread and whispered dreams still held on to those dreams, no matter how far they had to run.